The Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed hundreds of species under their rule. No enemy had ever defeated them in battle. Their warriors believed they were chosen by the universe itself to rule over all living things. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the viewing screen. Before him floated 12,000 warships. Each one was bigger than a mountain. Each one carried weapons that could turn cities into dust. This was the Grand Armada, the greatest military force ever assembled in the history of their empire. And today they had come to conquer a small blue planet called Earth. Was old, he had seen many battles, he had crushed many worlds, but he had never felt so bored. The intelligence reports about Earth made him almost fall asleep. The creatures living there called themselves humans. They had only discovered how to travel in space a few decades ago. Their weapons were laughable. They still used chemical explosives and primitive nuclear bombs. Their fastest ships could barely reach their own moon. "This will be over in 6 rotations," said to his officers. "Perhaps less. These humans are barely more than animals." His second-in-command nodded in agreement. "Shall we begin the standard conquest protocol, Commander?" "Yes, give them 1 rotation to surrender. If they refuse, we begin orbital bombardment. Simple." On the planet below, the humans had no idea what was coming, or so they believed. Was working late at the Space Center in Korea. She was a young astronomer who spent her nights watching the stars. Most nights were quiet. Most nights she saw nothing unusual, but this night was different. Her computer made a strange sound, then another, then hundreds of sounds at once, looked at her screen and felt her heart stop beating for a moment. There were objects appearing at the edge of the solar system, not 1 or 2, thousands of them, thousands of objects that were definitely not natural. Her hands were shaking as she picked up her phone. Within 1 hour, every telescope on Earth confirmed what she had seen. Within 2 hours, world leaders were screaming at each other in emergency meetings. Within 3 hours, the entire planet knew the truth. Aliens had come, and they had brought an army. Panic spread across the world like fire. People ran through the streets. Some prayed, some cried, some fought each other for food and water. Governments tried to keep order, but fear was stronger than any law. But not everyone was afraid. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, there was a secret bunker that did not appear on any map. Inside this bunker, a very different kind of meeting was happening. General Park stood at the front of a large room filled with military officers and scientists from every country on Earth. Park was a quiet man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had fought in 3 wars during his life. He had seen death many times, but he had never stopped believing that humans could survive anything. "Ladies and," he said in a steady voice, "we have been preparing for this day for 18 months. The room was silent. Many people looked confused. 18 months, how could anyone have known? Park pressed a button, and images appeared on the screen behind him. They showed a crashed object at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. It was clearly not from Earth. 19 months ago, our deep-sea exploration teams found this. It was a probe, an alien probe. We studied it in secret. We learned how their technology works, and most importantly, we learned that they were coming." A young woman stood up from her seat. Her name was Lee, and she was a quantum physicist. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were tired. She had not slept in 3 days. "I have been working on something," said. "Something based on the alien technology we found. It is a weapon, a gravitational displacement device. It is small enough to fit in a suitcase, but it is powerful enough to destroy a warship." The military officers looked at each other. Some looked hopeful, others looked doubtful. "How many do we have?" asked a general from America. Paused. "We have built 3,000 of them." The room exploded with questions and arguments. Park raised his hand for silence. "There is more," he said. "We have also been building warships in secret." hidden bases on the Moon, on Mars, in the asteroid belt. We have been preparing for this war while the rest of the world slept. An officer from China spoke up. But the aliens have 12,000 ships. Even with our preparations, how can we win? Park smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. The aliens think we are primitive. They think we are weak. They think we will surrender or die easily. This is their greatest weakness. He looked around the room at every face. We have been fighting wars since the beginning of our history. We have been killing each other with creativity and cleverness for 10,000 years. These aliens have never faced an enemy like us. He turned back to the screen and showed the alien armada floating in space. They expect animals, they expect fear, they expect surrender. His voice grew hard. Instead, we will give them the worst surprise of their lives. In orbit above Earth, Fleet Commander sent his message to the planet below. His voice was broadcast on every television, every radio, every phone on Earth. Creatures of this planet, I am Fleet Commander of the Empire. You are now subjects of our glorious civilization. You have one planetary rotation to surrender completely. If you do not surrender, we will begin destroying your cities one by one. Do not resist. Resistance is death. This is your only warning. The message ended, leaned back in his command chair and yawned. He expected crying. He expected begging. He expected the humans to fall on their knees and accept their new masters. What he received instead was silence. Then slowly something began to happen. Ships started launching from Earth. Not warships, small civilian vessels, cargo ships, passenger planes modified for space travel, private yachts, thousands of them rising from every continent. They were broadcasting messages of peace. They were begging for mercy. They were crying and pleading for their lives. Watch them with disgust. Pathetic, they send us their cowards. He ordered his fleet to ignore the civilian ships. They were obviously not a threat. They carried no weapons. They were just desperate refugees trying to escape. This was exactly what the humans wanted him to think. And soon, Fleet Commander would learn the most important lesson of his life. Humans were never more dangerous than when they appeared to be weak. The civilian ships rose from Earth like seeds blown from a flower. There were thousands of them. Old cargo ships with rusted hulls, passenger planes that had been quickly modified to survive in space, small yachts owned by rich families who wanted to escape. They moved slowly toward the alien armada, broadcasting their messages of peace and surrender on every frequency. Sargent sat in the pilot's seat of an old cargo ship called Morning Calm. She was 34 years old. Before this day, she had been a simple cargo pilot who moved supplies between Earth and the Moon. She had a small apartment inn. She had a cat named. She had never fired a weapon in her life. Now she was flying toward the largest alien warship she had ever seen, carrying a bomb that could crack a moon. Behind her in the cargo bay sat 11 other volunteers. There was a retired school teacher named who was 67 years old. There was a young engineer named who had just gotten married last month. There was a nurse named Shin who had cried when she said goodbye to her children. None of them were soldiers, all of them were afraid, but all of them had chosen to be here. "Remember the plan," said through the intercom. Her voice was calm even though her hands were shaking. "We get as close as possible, we wait for the signal, then we activate the device." His voice came back, steady and warm like a grandmother telling a bedtime story. "I remember, dear. I am not so old that I forget things." Almost laughed, almost. On the flagship, officers watched the approaching civilian ships with amusement. One young officer turned to Fleet Commander. "Commander, should we destroy them?" Waved his hand lazily. "Why waste ammunition? They are harmless. Let them come closer. Perhaps we will take some as slaves." The ships did not raise their shields. Why would they? These were obviously just frightened refugees. Their ships carried no weapons. Their signals were full of crying and begging. They were not a threat. They were entertainment. Morning Calm drifted within 500 meters of a destroyer. Could see the alien ship clearly now. It was massive, covered in strange symbols and glowing lights. She could see windows where alien figures moved inside. Her communicator buzzed. A single word appeared on the screen, now. Closed her eyes. She thought of her mother who had died when she was young. She thought of her father who had taught her to fly. She thought of the cat who would wonder why she never came home. "For our children," she whispered. She pressed the button. The gravitational displacement device was small. It fit in a metal case the size of a lunch box, but when it activated, it released energy that bent space itself. Everything within 300 meters was crushed into a point smaller than a grain of sand. Everything within a kilometer was torn apart by gravitational waves. Morning Calm disappeared in an instant. So did the destroyer. So did 46 other ships that were too close. Across the Armada, hundreds of similar explosions happened at the same moment. The civilian ships had spread themselves throughout the fleet. They had positioned themselves near the largest and most important vessels, and now they were all detonating at once. In 90 seconds, 2,000 warships were destroyed. Fleet Commander was thrown from his chair as his flagship shook violently. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. Officers shouted in confusion and fear. "What is happening?" roared. Commander's voice was high with panic. "The civilian ships, they were weapons. They have destroyed 2,000 of our vessels." Felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt fear. But the attack was not over. It was just beginning. From behind the moon, human warships emerged. Not the primitive rockets they had expected. These were sleek vessels covered in weapons that glowed with familiar energy. Energy that they recognized. Impossible stared at the screen. "They have our technology." Admiral Han commanded the human fleet from his flagship, a vessel named Vengeance. He was a calm man with silver hair and eyes that had seen many battles. He had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. 2 years building ships in secret. 2 years training crews who knew they might never come home. He opened a communication channel that every ship could hear. "Attention, fleet. My name is Admiral Han of Earth. You came to our home without invitation. You threatened our families. You called us primitive." He paused for a moment. "We have been fighting wars since before your species learned to make fire. Today, we will teach you why that matters." The human fleet attacked. Fighter pilot was 26 years old. She had grown up playing video games about space battles. She had dreamed of flying among the stars. Now she was doing exactly that, except the enemies were real and death was one mistake away. Her fighter was connected to her brain through a neural link. She did not need to touch controls. She only needed to think, and the ship responded. It moved faster than any pilot could follow. It danced between enemy ships like a leaf in the wind. Destroyed 4 enemy fighters in her first minute of combat. Then she destroyed 4 more. Her body and her ship became one being, moving with reflexes that had been developed over millions of years of human evolution. The pilots were skilled, but they were too slow. Human brains processed information faster. Human reflexes responded quicker. In close combat, this difference was everything. "Got another one," shouted as her weapons tore through an enemy fighter. "These guys are easy." Around her, other human pilots were experiencing the same thing. They had better technology. They had more ships, but humans had faster reactions and more creative tactics. Back on the flagship, Admiral Han watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. Blue dots represented human ships. Red dots represented the enemy. He watched as red dots disappeared one by one. "Send in the boarding teams," he ordered. Across the battlefield, small human vessels attached themselves to damaged ships. Marines in powered armor cut through alien hulls and fought their way inside. They were led by soldiers like Captain O, a quiet man who had grown up in a small fishing village and had become one of Earth's deadliest warriors. The soldiers inside their own ships were shocked. No enemy had ever boarded a vessel before. They did not know how to respond. They fought back, but the humans were faster, more aggressive, more willing to take risks. Within hours, 3 ships had been captured completely intact. And the humans were just getting started. Fleet Commander stood on his damaged bridge and watched his armada dying. 2,000 ships lost in the first attack. 3,000 more lost in the battle that followed. Half his fleet, gone in less than 6 hours. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had never lost a single major battle. Now he was losing everything. Commander said quietly, "What do we do?" Had no answer. For the first time in his life, he had no answer at all. On Earth, in the underground bunker, General Park watched the same battle on his screens. His face showed no expression, but inside his heart was singing. The humans were winning. But Park knew this was only the beginning. The real war would be fought not just with weapons, but with ideas. And humans had one more surprise waiting for the fleet. A surprise that would break their spirit forever. The Empire had studied Earth for many years before sending their armada. They had watched human television broadcasts. They had intercepted human radio signals. They had learned about human weapons, human governments, and human history. They believed they understood these strange creatures completely. They were wrong. They had seen human nuclear weapons and laughed at their primitive power. They had seen human jet fighters and dismissed them as toys. They had seen human armies marching with rifles and tanks, and they had felt nothing but contempt. What they had not seen was what humans hid. For decades, every major government on Earth had kept secrets from each other and from their own people. Secret weapons, secret research, secret plans for a war that they hoped would never come. But 18 months ago, when the alien probe was discovered at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, everything changed. For the first time in human history, every nation agreed to work together. Every secret was shared. Every resource was combined. Every genius and warrior was brought together for a single purpose: survival. The result was hidden in places they never thought to look. Beneath the surface of Mars, inside asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, in deep underground bases on the Moon. Factories worked day and night, building weapons that combined alien technology with human creativity. And now those weapons were awake. Colonel Shin commanded the ground forces defending Earth. He was a short man with a face and eyes that never seemed to blink. He had fought in jungles, deserts, and frozen mountains. He had survived wounds that should have killed him. He had learned every dirty trick that war could teach. Now he watched as landing craft descended toward Earth. Thousands of them, carrying millions of alien soldiers ready to conquer the planet. "Let them land," said to his officers. "Let them feel safe." The ground commander was named. He was proud and confident. His soldiers were the finest in the Empire. They had never lost a ground battle. His landing craft touched down in a wide valley surrounded by mountains. According to his sensors, the area was empty. No human forces were nearby. It seemed like the perfect place to establish a base. "Begin setting up defensive positions," ordered. "The humans will come to us and we will crush them." His soldiers spread out across the valley. They built walls and towers. They set up their powerful weapons. Within a few hours, they had created a fortress that seemed unbeatable. Then the mountains exploded. Hidden artillery positions, buried deep inside the rock, opened fire at once. Shells rained down on the base from every direction. But these were not ordinary shells. They were smart weapons that could change direction in midair. They sought out commanders and communication centers. They destroyed power generators and ammunition stores. Before could give a single order, his entire command structure was gone. Then the humans attacked. They came from underground tunnels that they had never detected. They came from the sky in aircraft that flew so low they almost touched the ground. They came from the mountains in small teams of soldiers who knew every rock and tree. They had better armor, they had stronger weapons, but the humans knew something the aliens did not understand. War was not about strength. War was about surprise, speed, and confusion. Captain led a team of 12 soldiers through the chaos. He was young, only 28, but he had been training for this moment his entire adult life. His team moved like shadows, appearing from nowhere, killing quickly, then disappearing again. Left side, 2 enemies, whispered through his communicator. 2 soft sounds, 2 aliens fell dead. Keep moving. His team reached the center of the base in 15 minutes. They found hiding in a bunker, surrounded by his personal guards. The guards were the biggest soldiers, armed with the best weapons. They died in seconds. Stood over the alien commander, looked up at him with 4 eyes full of confusion and fear. Impossible, whispered. You are primitive, you cannot defeat us. Shook his head slowly. You studied our weapons, you studied our technology, but you never studied our history. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have turned war into an art form. He pulled out a small device and pressed it against his neck. The alien commander fell unconscious. Prisoner secured, reported, moving to extraction point. Across the planet, similar battles were happening. They landed in cities and found every building was a trap. They landed in forests and found humans waiting in every shadow. They landed in deserts and found themselves surrounded by enemies who seemed to appear from the sand itself. On the flagship, Fleet Commander received report after report of disaster. His ground forces were being slaughtered. His landing craft were being shot down. His soldiers were surrendering. Surrendering. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. Soldiers did not surrender. It was against everything they believed. Yet hundreds of his troops were laying down their weapons and allowing themselves to be captured by these supposedly primitive humans. Why, demanded, why are they surrendering? His voice was quiet. Commander, the humans are treating our prisoners well. They are giving them food and medical care. They are not torturing them or killing them. Did not understand. In the Empire, prisoners were slaves at best. Usually they were simply killed. The idea of treating an enemy with kindness was completely alien to him. This must be a trick, he said. Perhaps, replied, but our soldiers believe it, and they are choosing to live rather than die. In space, the battle continued to go badly for the Admiral Hand's fleet had destroyed 3,000 more enemy ships. Human fighters danced around vessels like angry insects, too fast to hit, too deadly to ignore. Pilot had lost count of her kills. Her fighter's computer said 27, but she did not really care about numbers. She cared about keeping her friends alive. She cared about protecting her home. Squadron 7, form up on me, she called through her communicator. We are going after that big one. She pointed her fighter toward a battle cruiser that was twice the size of any human ship. It was protected by dozens of smaller vessels. Any normal attack would fail. But had an idea, a crazy idea, a very human idea. Follow my lead. Do exactly what I do, trust me. Her squadron flew directly at the battle cruiser. The defense ships moved to intercept. At the last moment, killed her engines and let her fighter spin wildly through space. The enemy targeting systems lost track of her. They were designed to hit ships that flew in straight lines. They could not handle a target that tumbled like a leaf in a storm. Her squadron followed her example. 12 human fighters spun and tumbled through the defense line, firing their weapons at seemingly random moments. But the randomness was calculated. Each shot hit something important. 10 seconds later, they were past the defense line. 5 seconds after that, they were inside the battle cruiser's shield range. 2 seconds after that, they were firing directly at the massive ship's engines. The battle cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth. In her spinning cockpit, allowed herself a small smile. Humans had not survived this long by being predictable. They had survived by being creative, by being stubborn, and by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. They were learning this lesson the hard way. And the hardest lesson was yet to come. 6 hours had passed since the battle began. Fleet Commander stood on his damaged bridge and stared at the tactical display in front of him. When the attack started, he had commanded 12,000 warships. Now he had fewer than 4,000 left. 8,000 vessels had been destroyed. Millions of his soldiers were dead. And the humans showed no signs of stopping. Had lived for over 200 years. He had fought in dozens of wars. He had conquered entire civilizations, but he had never experienced anything like this. The humans fought with a ferocity that seemed impossible for such a young species. They used tactics that made no sense until suddenly they made perfect sense. They appeared where they should not be. They disappeared when they should be trapped. Worst of all, they kept offering mercy. A human woman appeared on his communication screen. She was young, with dark hair and calm eyes. Her name was, and she was a diplomat who had been chosen for this moment because of her special talent. She had learned the language in only 2 days. When she spoke, her pronunciation was perfect. Her grammar was flawless. It was as if she had spoken her entire life. Fleet Commander said, "My name is, and I am speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government. We do not wish to destroy your fleet completely. We do not wish to kill any more of your soldiers. We only want you to leave our system in peace." Laughed bitterly. "You expect us to retreat. The Empire does not retreat." Nodded slowly. "I understand. Your culture values strength and conquest. Retreat feels like shame to you, but I ask you to consider something." She paused. "In the last 6 hours, you have lost 8,000 ships. At this rate, your entire fleet will be destroyed within the next 4 hours. Every soldier under your command will die. And for what? A planet you cannot hold. A victory that has already become impossible." "You know nothing of honor," shouted. "Perhaps not," replied calmly. "But I know something about survival, and I know that your soldiers are already choosing to live." She pressed a button, and the screen split to show images from human prisoner camps. Soldiers sat in clean rooms, eating food, receiving medical treatment for their wounds. Some of them were talking with human doctors. Some of them were even laughing. "We have captured over 50,000 of your soldiers," continued. "We have not tortured any of them. We have not killed any of them. We have treated them with the same respect we would give our own wounded, because we believe that every life has value, even the lives of those who came to destroy us." Stared at the images. He could not believe what he was seeing. Conquered enemies were supposed to be broken. They were supposed to beg for death. They were not supposed to be comfortable. "This is a trick," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "It is not a trick," said. "It is simply who we are. We are not monsters, Fleet Commander. We do not enjoy killing. We fight because you forced us to fight. We would rather have peace." The transmission ended, but its effect had only begun. Across the fleet, this message was being passed from ship to ship. Soldiers who had expected to die in glorious battle learned that they had another choice. They could surrender and live. They could surrender and be treated with kindness. For many of them, this was the most terrifying thing they had ever heard. Sub-Commander approached carefully. "Commander, we are receiving reports from multiple vessels. Crews are discussing the human offer." Discussing, his voice was dangerous. "Some are considering surrender. In the old days would have ordered those ships destroyed. Cowards deserved death, but he had already lost so many ships. He could not afford to kill his own soldiers now." "Tell them to hold their positions," he said. "Tell them reinforcements are coming." But they both knew it was a lie. The nearest reinforcements were months away. By the time they arrived, there would be nothing left to reinforce. On Earth, in the underground bunker, General Park watched the battle enter its final phase. The fleet was broken. Their morale was shattered. Their commander was making desperate decisions. "It is time," Park said to the young diplomat on his screen. "Begin the final phase." Nodded. She had been preparing for this moment for months. She understood something about war that many people forgot. The most important battles were fought in the mind, not in space. She opened a new broadcast channel. This time, she spoke not just to Fleet Commander but to every soldier in the system. "Soldiers of the Empire," she began, "I speak to you now not as an enemy but as one living being to another. You came to our world expecting an easy conquest. You were told that we were weak, primitive, easy to defeat. You were lied to." She let the words sink in before continuing. "Your commanders sent you here to die. They did not understand what they were facing. They did not know that humans have been fighting wars for longer than your empire has existed. They did not know that we would never surrender our home, no matter the cost." Images appeared on screens throughout the fleet, pictures of human history, soldiers standing against impossible odds, cities rebuilt from ruins, people helping each other after disasters, children playing in parks. "This is what we are fighting for," said. "Not territory, not power, not glory. We are fighting for our families, for our children, for the right to live in peace. And we will never, ever stop." Her voice grew softer, almost gentle. "But we do not hate you. We do not want revenge. If you leave our system now, we will not chase you. We will not attack you. We will simply remember that you came and we survived." The broadcast ended. For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly ships began to move, not toward Earth, away from it. At first it was just a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Ships were breaking formation and heading for the edge of the solar system. They were retreating. Fleet Commander screamed orders for them to stop. He threatened them with death. He promised them glory if they stayed. But his words meant nothing now. His soldiers had seen too much. They had lost too many friends. They had learned that the enemy they were supposed to crush was stronger, smarter, and more merciful than their own commanders. "This cannot be happening," whispered. We do not lose." Stood beside him. "Perhaps we have not lost, Commander. Perhaps we have simply learned that some worlds are not worth conquering." Within 2 hours, nearly half of the remaining ships had fled. Those that stayed fought on, but they were too few and too demoralized to win. Human forces hunted them down one by one. By the 10th hour of battle, Fleet Commander realized the truth. His invasion had failed completely. His armada was destroyed. His soldiers were dead, captured, or running away. He had come to Earth expecting to conquer animals. Instead, he had found something far more dangerous, a species that fought like demons and showed mercy like gods. As his flagship burned around him, gave his final order. "Any ship that can still fly, retreat to the Empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them." He paused, searching for words. "Tell them the humans are not what we thought they were. Tell them to never come back." His ship exploded moments later, but his message was already spreading across the stars. One ship escaped the solar system. It was a small scout vessel, barely large enough to carry 40 crew members. Its commander was a junior officer named who had been watching the battle from the edge of the system. He had seen everything: the surprise attack by the civilian ships, the emergence of the human fleet, the ground battles on Earth, the psychological warfare that had broken the spirit. He had seen 12,000 warships reduced to burning wreckage. He had seen the greatest armada in history destroyed by creatures his people had called primitive. And he had survived only because the humans had allowed him to survive. As his ship fled toward home, replayed the final transmission he had received from the human fleet. It was from Admiral Han, the human commander who had led the defense of Earth. "Scout vessel," the Admiral had said, "we know you are there. We are allowing you to leave. Go home. Tell your people what you saw. Tell them that Earth is not a world to be conquered. Tell them that we wish for peace, but we are prepared for war." Then, almost as an afterthought, "And tell them we remember everyone who came to harm us. We remember forever." The journey home took 3 months. Spent most of that time staring at the walls of his small cabin, trying to understand what had happened. He had been raised to believe that the Empire was unbeatable. He had been taught that other species were inferior, weak, meant to be conquered or destroyed. Everything he believed had been proven wrong in a single day. When his ship finally arrived was immediately brought before the High Council. The 12 most powerful leaders of the Empire sat in a half-circle, their 4 eyes watching him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The council leader spoke first. "You are the only survivor of the Grand Armada. Tell us what happened." Stood before them on trembling legs. He had rehearsed this moment many times. He knew that what he said would change the future of his entire civilization. "Honored Council," he began, "the humans are not what we believe them to be." "Explain," demanded a council member. "We thought they were primitive. We thought their weapons were weak. We thought they would surrender or die easily." Paused. "We were wrong about everything." He activated a holographic display. Images from the battle appeared in the air above the council chamber, ships exploding, soldiers being captured, formations breaking apart. "They knew we were coming," said. "They had been preparing for months, maybe years. They built weapons based on our own technology, taken from a probe we sent decades ago and forgot about. They created traps that we never saw until it was too late." A council member interrupted angrily. "Traps, tricks, these are the tactics of cowards." "No," said firmly, "these are the tactics of survivors." He changed the display to show scenes from Earth's history. Ancient battles, medieval wars, modern conflicts, humans killing humans with every weapon imaginable. "They have been fighting wars for longer than our empire has existed. They have turned combat into an art form. Every mistake we could make, they had already made themselves 1,000 times. Every strategy we tried, they had countered centuries ago." The council watched in silence as images of human warfare filled the chamber. Siege weapons, cavalry charges, trench warfare, nuclear explosions. The scale of human violence was almost incomprehensible. "But that is not the most dangerous thing about them," continued. "The most dangerous thing is what they fight for." He showed new images, human families, parents protecting children, soldiers standing over fallen friends, doctors treating wounded enemies. "They do not fight for territory or resources or power. They fight because they love. They love their families. They love their world. They love each other in ways we do not understand. And they will do absolutely anything to protect what they love." Met the eyes of each council member in turn. "I watched them destroy 8,000 of our ships. I watched them crush our ground forces. I watched them capture 50,000 of our soldiers. And then I watched them treat those prisoners with kindness and respect." "Impossible," someone muttered. "I saw it with my own eyes. They fed our soldiers. They healed their wounds. They did not torture or execute anyone. When our soldiers surrendered, the humans simply welcomed them." The council chamber was completely silent. This concept was so foreign to thinking that no one knew how to respond. "Before I escaped," said quietly, "the humans sent me one final message. I believe they wanted me to carry it back to you. They wanted you to understand something." He pressed a button on his display. A human woman appeared on the screen. She was holding an infant child in her arms, smiling at the camera. Her eyes were tired but warm. Her face was gentle. "This is Dr. O," said. "She was one of the scientists who designed the weapons that destroyed our fleet. She has a daughter. She sent me this image and a simple message." The council leaned forward. She said, "Tell your people we have no interest in conquest. Tell them we only want to live in peace. but tell them also what happens when peace is to us. Turned off the display. The humans are not like us. They do not want to rule the galaxy. They do not want to destroy other species. They simply want to be left alone with their families and their world. But if anyone threatens what they love... He remembered the burning ships, the dying screams on the communication channels, the way the human fighters had danced through space like they were born for nothing else. If anyone threatens what they love, they become something terrible, something that cannot be stopped, something that does not know how to give up. The council deliberated for 9 cycles. The arguments were fierce. Some wanted to send another armada, larger than before, to avenge their fallen soldiers. Some wanted to negotiate a peace treaty. Some wanted to pretend the whole disaster had never happened. In the end, they chose the only option that made sense. The Sol system was declared a forbidden zone. No vessel, for any reason, was ever to approach human space again. Anyone who violated this rule would be executed without trial. The official explanation was strategic resource allocation. The system had no valuable minerals. There was no point in conquering it. The unofficial explanation was never written down, but every officer knew the truth. The humans were too dangerous to fight, and too strange to understand. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The wreckage of the battle was cleaned up. The prisoners were eventually returned to there. The heroes were honored with medals and monuments. But the work was not finished. Lee, the physicist who had created the gravitational weapons, sat in her small apartment in Seoul one night. Her daughter was asleep in the next room. The sky outside was full of stars. She knew that they were not the only threat in the galaxy. There were other empires, other civilizations, other creatures who might one day look at Earth and see an easy target. Her computer screen showed designs for new weapons, better shields, faster ships, defenses that could protect humanity from anything the universe might send. She worked until dawn, then kissed her sleeping daughter's forehead and went back to work. General Park retired from military service 1 year after the battle, but he never stopped watching the stars. He spent his final years building training programs for young officers, teaching them the lessons that had saved humanity. The universe is large, he told them, and we are very small, but size is not everything. Courage is not measured in meters or megatons. It is measured in the willingness to stand up when everyone says you should fall down. Admiral Han continued to lead Earth's defense fleet. Under his command, human ships patrolled the solar system constantly, watching for any sign of new threats. He hoped they would never come, but he prepared for them anyway. Pilot became a teacher at the Space Academy. She trained the next generation of fighters, passing on the skills and instincts that had allowed her to survive the battle. Her students adored her. Her enemies had learned to fear her name. And somewhere in the depths of space, on 100 alien worlds, a story was being told. A story about a small blue planet whose people had been called primitive and weak. A story about an armada that had expected easy victory and found only death. A story about survivors who fought with tricks and kindness and terrible fury. The story always ended the same way. Never go to Earth, never threaten the humans, never test their patience. Because when humans loved something, they would burn the stars themselves to protect it. And the universe, for all its size and power, had learned to respect that.